Well, hey, everybody, it's Professor Smith here. I thought we would talk just a little bit about the next unit here that started last week and continues through February 20th. This is on Hibbing and Theiss-Morse. John Hibbing and Elizabeth Theiss-Morse, two professors at the University of Nebraska, who I think are just absolutely groundbreaking. And I think that as future teachers, you all really need to know what they're saying, especially about civic engagement, because according to them, the way we are teaching civic engagement is all wrong. Now, let me explain. One of the books that Hibbing and Theiss-Morse are responding to is a book that was published back in the early 2000s called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. And in that book, he argued that due to the fact that people were watching TV or on the internet, the book was a little too early for social media, but they did have the internet. People were spending less and less time joining voluntary associations like church groups or the Lions Club, the Elks Club, the Optimists, Kiwanis, groups like this, a Junior League, PTA. And that lack of joining was weakening what we call social capital. That's this idea that we have a certain amount of assets, not financial assets, but a different kind of assets, kind of like political capital. When politicians, when they're popular, they have political capital. We have social capital. We have things we can draw on. If we're stuck with a problem with local government, let's say, or in the schools, we have people we can call, people we can talk to, and we also have a skill set. We know how to approach people effectively and how not to. And so that we can work on getting our problem solved, get the concern about our child's AYP plan resolved with the teacher, or get a pothole in front of the house filled, as well as making connections. And making connections with other people, we know from research, is one of the absolute most important things we can do for our own happiness. Beyond a certain point, having more money doesn't make us any happier, but having deep relationships with people, including people in the community, it does. And Putnam, the scholar Robert Putnam, whom we do not read in this class, but he was quite concerned about the decline in joining, the decline in people joining all these different groups that used to keep people active in their community. And he believed that television was the primary problem. The internet was still fairly new when he published the first edition of this book. Well, fast forward to more recent times, Hibbing and Theiss-Morse are not entirely convinced by Putnam's argument. They see some validity in the idea of joining, but they believe that encouraging people to join the traditional civic associations will not build the kind of capital we need, the kind of social capital. And their argument is that the only way you can really build social capital to participate in a pluralistic democracy, that is to say, a democracy where different groups compete for influence and the resulting policies are a compromise. The only way to really do that is to teach people to manage conflict. Well, the kind of groups that people traditionally join, and this would probably extend to many online groups now and social media-based groups as well, or groups that both meet in person and online, oftentimes group together people who agree with each other. And many times these groups tend to make decisions by consensus. Now, that may be beneficial in terms of opportunities to make friends and so forth, but it will not build the social capital we need to sustain pluralistic democracy. That's because what it takes to sustain pluralistic democracy is to manage conflict. What sustains a pluralistic democracy is when we disagree, even profoundly with each other. But instead of withdrawing or resorting to violence, we hash out our differences, work through it, and ultimately reach some type of compromise. And so for Hibbing and Theiss-Morse, just encouraging people to go into the community and join things, while that may have certain advantages unrelated to politics, it's not going to solve our political problem. We have to get people in situations where they disagree with each other, sometimes on issues about which they are quite passionate, and they have to work out their disagreements. And if Hibbing and Theiss-Morse are to be believed, we really can't save our democracy until we start building those skills. It's a very different approach from Putnam's and that of many others, and one that I find compelling. One more thing I'll mention, and then I'll take a look at the assignment with you. Hibbing and Theiss-Morse also wrote an excellent book. I thought about assigning it, but I decided that this article I'm assigning, of course, we love it that it's free, but also it's more relevant to teaching. Hibbing and Theiss-Morse's book, Stealth Democracy, isn't specifically about teaching, whereas the article I've assigned you, it is. So we'll read that. But for further reading, if you really get into this, I cannot recommend their 2003 book, Stealth Democracy, highly enough. It's one of my cornerstones now for studying public opinion. And that book is disturbing. These two authors essentially argue that many Americans do not value the core values of democracy, particularly when it comes to doing things like participating in time-consuming meetings to achieve compromises with people with whom they disagree. And because of that, many Americans may not fundamentally support the core values of democracy and may not care or may even actively participate in threats or challenges to those core values. Now, I'm not saying that Hibbing and Theiss-Morse foresaw the coup attempt at the US Capitol on January 6, 2021, but they certainly understood the climate that would lead to it. So that is well worth reading, but it's not on our syllabus. What's on our syllabus is this article. Let's take a look. Here comes the screen share. And as you can see, this is our unit 2. I did miss a deadline myself, my apologies. So I have tweaked this unit to push that back to February 20th. And that still gives us 3 whole weeks on the spiral of silence. And that's without interrupting spring break. So I think we're going to be okay. So we now have till February 20th to work on that. This hyperlink right here will take you to the reading. Let me show you that really quickly. Once you get to the landing page, you then need to download or read, but it should be free. Yep, there it is. There's your article. Print it and read a hard copy or read it online. I will let you decide, but I do highly recommend that you take notes as you read. And it's, in my opinion, just an excellent, if rather sobering article. So take a look at that. Now, here's the bottom line. What we're doing here is we are talking about teaching students to manage conflict. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to come up with an assignment where you throw students together that have to reach a compromise about an issue on which they disagree. Make it an issue that they're passionate about, not just what dessert should be served after school lunch or something silly. Make it something pretty deep and fundamental, things that trigger people's strong feelings, you know, policies with regards to classroom behavior or something like that, or an issue in national politics. But that decision is yours, or you can let the students make some decisions with you supervising, but give them some examples if you do. But get the students in a situation where they can't just be all in together and affirm things by consensus and have a big old love-in, because according to Hibbing and Theiss-Morse, as you'll see when you read the article, that's not going to fix the problems in our democracy. We have to embrace conflict. We have to be willing to sit down with people with whom we disagree and hash it out. And it can be difficult and complicated. Hibbing and Theiss-Morse even call it teaching barbarics. So sometimes our behavior can get a little barbaric, but how do we do that in a way that is fair and respectful of people with whom we disagree? Teach the barbarics for this assignment. So I want you to come up with an idea, break it down into how you'll implement it. It is your choice whether you use Microsoft PowerPoint, Apple Keynote, Google Slides, Office Libre, Present, or even Prezi. However, be sure that you either give me a link to it or that you save it as a PowerPoint readable or PDF readable file. And actually PDF readable will not work this time because I'm going to ask you to do a voiceover. So that's the new tweak. I want you to do this time a presentation, a presentation with voiceover. So I want to hear your voice as you walk the students through the lesson that you're going to assign to them about how they have to disagree and be kind to one another, but still work out their differences. And they don't have to reach consensus. They have to reach a workable compromise. Teach those barbarics and do it with voiceover. Now, I have posted for you, let's go to modules here. I have posted for you a list of instructions on how to make a PowerPoint with voiceover. I know that this is reliable because it's right off the Microsoft website. So it's not some rogue thing or a link that's actually going to get you a virus. This is the real deal directly from Microsoft. And you can also do that, I know, with Apple Keynote and some of the others. However, be sure to do a save as PowerPoint once it's made so that I can read it on my Windows computer. But at any rate, what I'm asking you to do is a presentation with voiceover teaching the barbarics of politics. Let's get these students to deal with their conflicts, but deal with them in such a way that they're respectful of each other and of the process. Because just getting people to agree and do things by consensus, according to Hibbing and Theiss-Morse, it not only doesn't support the values of pluralistic democracy, it may actually make them worse. They actually argue that if people are used to doing things by consensus with other people that have the same values they do, when they're thrown into a situation with people that have different values and don't agree with them, they may be even more likely to walk away and resort to violence than if they hadn't been doing civic engagement at all. Pretty strong argument, kind of cynical, but not hopeless. Thanks to future teachers like you all, we can teach students to manage these barbarics. And that's what I'm asking you to do. And I can't wait to see and listen to your projects. Remember, I'm always here. My contact information is on the syllabus. Office hours are available to distance learners via Zoom. And I also have 2 offices on campus. And of course, I check my email regularly. So see you online.